guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Jill and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up and February TBR. So let's get started. So, January is the first month in 2017. How did my reading go this month? I think it went pretty well. I ended up completing 6 books and I'm actually currently reading 2 books, and since I'm filming this a few days before January is over, it's a high probability that I'm going to be finishing the 2 books that I'm currently reading, so that'll bring my total up to 8. Just before I go any further, I just want to take some time to thank you guys so much for over 3,000 subscribers. Honestly, I feel like a broken record saying this, but you guys literally make my days so much better. You completely blow me away. I just cannot even fathom that over 3,000 of you think that I am worthy enough to be subscribed to. It's just crazy to me. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. Now before I keep rambling, I'm just going to get right into the books that I completed in January. So the first book that I completed in 2017 was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. And me and my best friend Ray Ann actually did a buddy read for this book, and I did a whole review discussion of the book. I will link that down below if you want to go check it out. Basically, this is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. I loved it. This book completely destroyed my soul. It was so good, but the ending completely killed me, dead. I was on the floor. I was dead. Yeah, so this book just completely slaughtered my feelings, but I still really loved it, and I can't wait for the 6th one to come out. Before I get any further, speaking of Sarah J. Maas, we got the cover of Aquawar, and I knew that in one of my videos coming up that I was going to have to talk about this.
So, it's so pretty. Do you see her dress? I can't wait. I can't wait.
Moving on, the next book that I completed in January was The You I've Never Known by Ellen Hopkins. So I've never read an Ellen Hopkins book before, so I was not sure what I was getting myself into because this book is completely written in verse. So it did, I kind of flew through it because it looks really chunky, but it's actually mostly written in verse. And the summary of this one just is freaking crazy, as this book is just crazy. Basically it follows this girl named Ariel, and she is living with her father because her mother actually abandoned her. So she basically has to deal with the fact that her mother left her when she was a baby. It also follows a girl named Maya, and she is actually a teenager, and she falls for this older man, and she ends up getting pregnant. So she ends up being a teenager who is pregnant, and she has to deal with raising a child when she's so young. Overall, I enjoyed this book. I didn't love it. I don't know, it just it just didn't completely blow me away. It was nothing I've ever read before. I've never read this story with this heavy of a subject matter. I really loved the core, the story, but I guess the characters just weren't my favorite, and I don't even know. As you can tell, my thoughts are just sort of all over the place. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. It doesn't stick in my heart or anything. It was okay, I guess. Next up, I had to read a book for school over winter break because that's what my school does, and that is A Mathematician's Lament: How Schools Cheat Us from Our Most Fascinating and Imaginative Art Form by Paul Lockhart. The book was interesting. I'm not really gonna go into a huge in-depth review of it. Basically, he talks about how the current school system basically makes math out to be this awful thing. I'm sure most of you guys out there would agree that oh, you hate math, or math is boring, or something along those lines. And he basically says, well, that's sort of the school system's fault, and the reason behind people not liking math is because it's taught in the wrong way. Anyway, it was really interesting. I agreed with some of the things that he said, not all of them, but some of them. And yeah, so it was interesting. Next up, I read an absolutely fantastic book, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Now, the movie was coming out in the United States at the beginning of January, so I wanted to read this book before I went to go see the movie, obviously. I knew this book was sad, okay? I've heard so many people talk about how sad it was. I was not prepared for how sad it actually was. The entire second half, I was just sobbing. Uncontrollable sobbing. Just go into it completely blind. I promise you that is the best way that you can go into this book. The only thing I'm going to say is that before I knew anything about it, I thought this book was a horror, adventure thing. It is not at all. So that's all I'm going to say. The pictures in this are just freaking juicy. Do you see the pictures? These pictures are freaking amazing. I love the pictures. books. Next up, I actually had another book that I really enjoyed and I was not expecting to enjoy it, and that is The Forgetting by Sharon Cameron. I went into this book not really expecting to like it because I've read some reviews on Goodreads and most of them were pretty negative, saying it was slow and that it wasn't very interesting and, you know, the gist. But I found this book to be fantastic. So this book follows a girl named Nadia, and she lives in this world where every 12 years there is an epidemic thing called the forgetting. And on this day of the forgetting, you guessed it, you forget. You forget everything that happened prior to that day. So like those 12 years, you completely forget those 12 years. And the only way that you can remember is if you write down your life. And so obviously this world preaches that you should always write down the truth. I mean, you can guess what might happen if you could literally rewrite your life. You could become a completely different person. You could, like, if you did something bad and you felt guilty about it, you could completely, like, not put it in your book. I'm just saying that sometimes, you know, people aren't going to follow this rule. Anyway, so it follows this girl named Nadia, right? And she has never forgotten. So she basically uses this like power of never having forgotten to sort of research the forgetting, try to find out if she can stop it, where it came from, all that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed it. Lots of the reviews that I were reading said that the pacing was awful, that it was too slow. I really enjoyed the pacing. I thought that it gave, it was a little bit slow. I can see why some people would think that it's a little bit slow, but I thought that it gave the plot time to develop. I thought it gave the characters time to develop. I thought the pacing was really, really wonderful because I could honestly care for the characters and stuff like that. Nadia wasn't like my absolute favorite, but Gray, who's the male in this book, was so cute. I loved him. Anyway, so I really liked this book. It gave me like major Giver vibes by Lois Lowry, and also it gave me a little bit of Incarnate by Jodi Meadows vibes. If you read either of those, they're kind of similar. I don't know, I just got those vibes from it. And the final book that I actually completed in the month of January was another really great book, and that is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I went into this book having hopes up to the moon because one of my favorite people in the entire world told me that this book was the best thing ever, and she absolutely loves this book. And so I was going in having the highest hopes, and they weren't quite met. I still really enjoyed this book. I just didn't like love it, if you know what I'm saying. This book has the most interesting world that I've probably ever read about ever. It is so cool, and that's like one of the main reasons why I really enjoyed it. Basically, it follows these two characters named Citra and Rowan, and they're in this world. It's sort of like a utopia. Like, normally this is shelled under dystopian, but I think it's sort of like a utopian because it's in this world where there's no disease, no death, no misery. Everyone's immortal because humanity has defeated death, basically. And that sounds all fine and dandy until you remember, oh yeah, like population control, like we should probably have something because like our world can only sustain a certain amount of people, so we gotta have some way to manage the population. That's where scythes come in. So scythes are the ones that are chosen out of the population who are going to be the ones who decide who to glean, which is just another word for kill. So they basically go around and they kill people in order to manage the population. So it's so cool, trust me. And so back to Citra and Rowan. So Citra and Rowan are actually chosen to be a scythe apprentice. They both really don't want to do this. They do not want to kill people for the rest of their lives. But they're chosen, so they sort of have to do it. It follows Citra and Rowan's journey throughout an entire year of being a scythe apprentice, and so cool. My main critique of this book was it does take place over a year. So some of the pacing was a little bit off. Some of the things that I wanted more developed were not developed. Specifically, sort of like some training thing. We didn't really get to see any training in this book, and I just really wanted to see just a little bit of scythe training, but we just sort of said, oh, we're going into training, and then they were trained. You kind of know what I'm saying? And also, I'm not going to spoil it, but this one thing at the end with Citra, I really wanted to see like developed, but it just skipped over it, and I was like, okay. Anyway, so the pacing was a little bit strange, and the characters weren't like my absolute favorite. So the male character's name is Rowan, and so automatically I'm going to like him more because Rowan Whitethorn, every single time I saw his name I'm like, Rowan, which I guess is kind of biased, but I do think that Rowan's storyline was actually like more interesting than Citra's was. This book was freaking unique. I think it actually just won the Prince Honor Award, which is just freaking amazing. I'm so proud of this book. If you're looking for something different, read this book. A breath of fresh air to the YA genre. So now onto the 2 books that I am currently reading. So again, I'll probably finish these by the end of January. But the first one I have is one that I've been reading for school, and that is The Republic of Plato. If you don't know, this is a book of philosophy written by Plato about Socrates. Philosophy isn't exactly my forte. I'm sort of more of a literature story kind of gal, so philosophy isn't necessarily the thing that I really enjoy. It's interesting, you know, it's there, it's fine. And the second book that I'm currently reading is The Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, and I read Red Queen and it was okay. I had such high hopes. I want to smack so many people in this book. I want to run them over. I'm sorry, I'll talk about it more in my February wrap up. Hopefully it gets like better by the end. I'm like that far through. And now getting into some of the books that I want to read in February. So if you watched my January wrap up, basically I talked about in there that I'm not really going to do big TBRs because I never stick to them. So I'm just going to do a few books that I sort of have to read. So the first one goes hand in hand with the one that I just showed, The Glass Sword, and that is The King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. And this is actually one of my book club books for the month. Basically, Victoria Aveyard is visiting my local bookstore. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the signing for her, but we are going to be reading her book. And hopefully this third one's better than the second and the first one. The second book I have is my second book club book of the month, and that is Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I don't know much about this book. I just know that it's been compared to Red Queen, and I know that it's about this girl named Ruby, and she's a fireblood, and I guess like the people are ruled by frostblood, so if you have fire in your blood, like you're not supposed to have fire in your blood. Something like that. The summary kind of sounds very like unoriginal in my opinion, but I've heard many people saying that this is actually really fantastic, so I'm really excited to see how I think about this. So the last book that I really want to get to in the month of February is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And this book I think I'm going to be buddy reading with my really good friend on Instagram, at A Stroke of Genius. I will link her down below. She does calligraphy and she is bomb at calligraphy. I highly suggest checking her out. She is amazing. Anyway, so we talked about having a buddy read of this book, and I really want to do it this month because V.E. Schwab is actually coming to my local bookstore in the beginning of March for the release of the third book in this series. I really want to get on this series before she comes so it's not like awkward, so that I would actually have read this series. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm really excited. I've heard this book is fantastic from so many people. It's about parallel Londons. That's all I really know. I hope I enjoy it. I don't really have a date set for the buddy read yet, but hopefully it's sometime in February. We'll see. So there you guys have it. That was my January wrap up and little February TBR. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Give it a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more bookish things from me, and comment down below your favorite book that you read in January or the book that you are most looking forward to reading in February. I have my Goodreads, Twitter, personal Instagram, and Bookstagram all linked down below for you guys. And yeah, thanks again so much for watching. I'll see you guys later in another video.